brands have managed to maintain their history, legacy, and still remain relevant in today's market. And one of those brands is most undoubtedly Guerlain. It was founded in the 1800s, and it is responsible for trailblazing a bunch of innovations, including their iconic Shalimar fragrance, but also Jiki, which was considered to be the first modern perfume. We're going to be talking about Guerlain today, diving into the history of the house, how it has developed over the decades, and also delving into some of their more iconic fragrances. If this is your first time watching this podcast or listening to it or watching it on YouTube, this is the Fragrance Report, a podcast where we talk about all things beauty and fragrance history. I'm your host, Anya. I absolutely have an obsession and a love for all things fragrance and beauty, and I have transferred it to this podcast because I love talking about the history behind these things. This time we're talking about Guerlain, which is a really iconic fragrance house. And what I find interesting about them is that, like I said before, they really have maintained that relevancy, even in a rapidly changing global environment, because you have a bunch of other brands that we've talked about on this podcast before, brands that have definitely made their mark, but you look at their influence today and it's not as present as it once was. Guerlain is definitely one of the exceptions to that, and that's why I'm so excited to dive into this podcast today. This is going to be the inaugural episode of our second season. We have had season 1 previously, which was amazing. I was filming that for about a year, and it was lovely because it started out and then it developed into something that people resonated with a lot. And I find that this kind of podcast format is maybe not the most the most clickable or the most sought after topic. But I think that with this podcast, I'm really grateful to have built up a core audience of people who really find this information fascinating, who have a love of history and perfume and beauty, and really want to see content about that. And I love that. And it gives me an opportunity to really dive into these kinds of topics and share that information with you. So if you want to learn more about this podcast, you can check it out on Spotify. You can also check out the playlist on YouTube. I launched a new episode of this podcast every Wednesday. So with that being said, we have a lot to get through. So let's get started. As usual, we're kicking things off with fragrance favorites. I've decided to streamline my favorites into 3 fragrances that have really stood out to me over the last week or so, and I have them here with me. The first is a fragrance that, if I had to choose a perfume that I really, really have loved historically, but I just haven't been giving enough attention to, one of those fragrances would definitely be this. It's Mula Mula by Byron. I have been obsessed with oud lately, and I know I keep talking about this, but ever since I came back from the Middle East, my experience there has definitely impacted what I choose to wear on a daily basis. So I've been wearing a lot of oud, and Mula Mula is a beautiful oud fragrance with a lot of fruity notes. And what I love about this is that it's sweet, it's fruity, it's strong. So if you are going out at night, if you are having a night out on the town and you want something that is intense, that will really, announce that you've arrived, and it'll give people enough of an impression so you can get some compliments, try this out. It's beautiful. So you basically have, I believe, raspberry, peach, oud, pink pepper, and some ginger, and it's essentially like a fruity, delicious scent with an ambery, resinous, oudy wood base. I love that. I love this, and I actually wore this last night, paired with another fragrance that I absolutely love. I mention this every now and then because I'm like, if you happen to be able to get this fragrance, you definitely should get your hands on this. But this is a fragrance that's only available, from what I can gather, in the Middle East. It might be available in Europe, but I got it from the Middle East. But this is a fragrance called Khaltat Blends of Love, and it's Love Everywhere. And this is the body mist, but the body mist functions like a Western perfume. So it's actually pretty good, great value, considering that look at how much I've used this. Considering that I paid $100 for it, and I've had this for a while, but I really, really love it. It's just classic sweet sugary oud. I love this so much. Every single time I wear this, I get a comment on it, I get a compliment. So I wear this layered with so many of my other fragrances when I want to add a little bit of depth, when I want to add some power, when I want to add some oomph. This is like catnip for me personally, and for other people, but I absolutely love this. I think it's phenomenal. I also want to turn you on to this fragrance that actually matches my outfit today. This is Iris Shot, and essentially this is by the brand Olfactive Studio. It has like this leather case on it, and I kind of want to take it off so I can see how much of a dent I've made in it so far. Okay, so this is like what the dent is currently. I've had this for like, how long has it been? Like over a week. And I've been utilizing this fragrance. It's essentially kind of like a waxy, vintagey, makeup-y lipstick fragrance, but it's lighter. It's not as like heavy or cloying. It's lightly powdery. It's like oracey. Let me look up the notes for you actually. Okay, so Iris Shot by Olfactive Studio is a fragrance with aldehydes, cardamom, cassis, pink pepper at the top, made of iris, almond, and carrot seeds, and then a base of Virginia cedarwood, Haitian veteran, and Broxton. I think the carrot seed here really adds to that waxy, lipsticky nuance. I adore this fragrance. To be quite honest with you, I've been wearing this a lot when I've been working. I've just been spraying this on repeatedly throughout the day. In my experience, it doesn't last that significantly, which is fine if you want to have like a fragrance that's lipsticky, makeup-y, but that doesn't last, because there are a few fragrances in my collection that also have a lipsticky, makeup-y scent profile that lasts longer. I'm thinking about like Oris by Commodity. That one I love. It lasts longer than this, but this I like when I just want like a refreshing light touch of lipstick. I don't necessarily want something that will like stay on my skin. I'm okay with like spraying it on throughout the day. So Iris Shot by Olfactive Studio. I believe I do have a code with them. If I don't, I'll probably have one soon. But yeah, this was sent to me by the brand, and I absolutely love it. Our story begins with Pierre-Francois Pascal Guerlain. He was born in 1798, and he became a perfumer and chemist by trade. Then, in 1828, he opened his first boutique on the Rue de Rivoli in Paris, and his main achievement came later in 1853. One of Pierre-Francois Pascal's crowning achievements would occur in 1853 when he was asked to commemorate the wedding between Empress Eugenie and Emperor Napoleon III by creating a fragrance. Pierre-Francois Pascal Guerlain was asked to create a fragrance to commemorate the occasion for Empress Eugenie, and he formulated Eau de Cologne Imperial. This perfume was fresh, lively, it blended bergamot, lemon, petitgrain, and orange blossom, and it continues to still be available today, albeit in its reformulated form. However, what's interesting is that the Empress actually really loved this scent because it helped her with her migraines. So she was able to use it in several ways, not just as a personal scent. A little bit more about the Empress. She was born on the 5th of May, 1826 as, let me get prepared for this, Donna Maria Eugenia Ignacia Augustina de Palafox y Kirkpatrick. And I might be mispronouncing that. If so, forgive me. But she was also known as the 19th Countess of Tiba and the 16th Marchioness of Ardalis. And she became the French Empress upon her marriage to Emperor Napoleon on the 30th of January in 1853. And this position in her life lasted until the emperor was overthrown on the 4th of September 1870. And this was due to societal unrest and his wife's involvement in politics. And of course, the French people did not like that very much, so they got overthrown. And the couple had one child together, Napoleon, Prince Imperial, and he was born in 1856 and he died in 1879. And after the fall of their empire, the three lived in exile in England, and Empress Eugenie outlived both her husband and son, and she spent the remainder of her life working to commemorate her and their memories and the memory of the Second Empire in France, and she would die on the 11th of July in 1920. Let's go back a little bit to the fragrance that Empress Eugenie would become known for, which was her wedding scent, Eau de Cologne Imperial. And this is a fragrance that was housed in an iconic bottle that would also bear similar motifs that we associate with Guerlain today. So we had a cylindrical bottle, and it was stamped in relief with bees made of fine gold, and basically had a dome over the top. And this dome was inspired by the dome of the Vendôme column, the Place Vendôme, located near the Guerlain shop at the time, on Rue de la Paix. And the bee itself was an imperial symbol of France, and it was a symbol that had been associated with French nobility from years prior, and them bringing it back was symbolic because it was supposed to really resemble immortality and the resurrection of the French monarchy. And this was supposed to be very emblematic and was supposed to correlate to the power established by Napoleon III and Empress Eugenie's position within France. And the bee design was chosen by Napoleon himself to represent the new French dynasty, and it became a prominent motif not only for the couple but also for Guerlain and the company as a whole. And we see the bee bottle now throughout many, if not nearly every single fragrance that Guerlain releases. It's a very powerful indicator of the house and also its imperial origins as well. The bottle of Eau de Cologne Imperial also featured the symbol of the empire with the coat of arms on the bottle being chosen by Napoleon, which included the eagle, the imperial crown, and the scepter. The fragrance was enjoyed exclusively by the Empress before she gave her authorization for the fragrance to be sold to the public a few years after its original formulation. And by creating the perfume for the Empress, Pierre-François Pascal Guerlain earned the title Perfumer to His Majesty, solidifying this age-old relationship that the house would then proceed to have with celebrity and royalty. After Pierre-François Pascal came Guerlain. He is known as the father of modern perfumery, and from 1864, which was the year of Pierre-François Pascal's death, he headed the perfume house of Guerlain. Guerlain is known most certainly for his creation of the fragrance Jicky, which was known to be the world's, or one of the world's, first abstract perfumes. And the meaning of this is that this is a perfume that wasn't based on a singular note. It was based on a variety of notes, including spices, lemon, lavender, wood, and vanilla. And the stopper of this fragrance was originally shaped like a champagne cork, and the fragrance itself also popularized the use of synthetic materials, which was a very new concept at the time of its release in 1889. Under his leadership, Guerlain was also known for popularizing other innovations, such as the first refillable tube lipstick. This was not the first time the lipstick had been released. Of course, lip color had been used for centuries, thousands of years prior to this, but this was the first time that someone decided to put a lipstick in a tube, and Guerlain was actually inspired by candle makers whenever he came up with this design. So there were a few innovations that the house was able to experience under his leadership for sure. After came Jacques Guerlain. He was nephew, and he is responsible for several of Guerlain's most famous fragrances, but most notably Shalimar, a fragrance that was launched in 1925 and is known as one of the first amber perfumes on the market. Now, a little bit more information about Shalimar. Jacques Guerlain was inspired by Mumtaz Mahal, which was the wife of Shah Jahan. He was the Mughal emperor of India, and he originally created the Taj Mahal in Agra, which of course is one of the wonders of the ancient world. The idea of Shalimar was created when Jacques Guerlain poured a bottle of ethyl vanillin into a bottle of Jicky, which, as we mentioned, had been previously created by his predecessor. And using this combination, he was able to create this really beautiful, intense ambery vanilla fragrance, which was, of course, a trailblazing fragrance for the house. And the bottle design itself was created by Raymond Guerlain, and the design was modeled after the basins of Eastern Gardens and Mongolian stupa art. The fan-shaped bottle topper was inspired by a piece of silverware owned owned by the Guerlain family, and the bottle itself was manufactured by Baccarat Crystal and received the Decorative Arts Exhibition Award in 1925. Now, the fragrance itself did include notes like bergamot, lemon, iris, jasmine, rose, patchouli, vetiver, openex, tonka bean, frankincense, sandalwood, musk, civet, ambergris, leather, and vanilla. Shalimar is considered one of the most popular fragrances from Guerlain, and it is still celebrated as one of the premier vanilla and ambery fragrances in the industry. The last member of the Guerlain family to participate in the creation of the perfume division of Guerlain was Jean-Paul Guerlain, and he is someone that is credited with a variety of Guerlain's most famous scents, including Chamande in 1969, Nahema in 1979, and Vetiver in 1959, as well as Habit Rouge in 1965 for men. His most famous creation is Samsara in 1989. And this was a fragrance that he became known for. He also is known for creating the first collection of Aqua Allegoria in 1999, a collection which is still housed in that iconic Guerlain perfume bottle that's inspired by the Place Vendôme and the bee design. Of course, we see that constantly. But unfortunately, in 2002, he gave an interview where he talked about the inspiration behind Samsara. During this interview, he used certain language to describe the inspiration behind his most famous fragrance, Samsara. And this language is what then landed him in court under accusation of using racist and harmful language in public. The controversy behind the scandal was so great that in 2002 he stepped down in early retirement from leading the perfume division of the brand. I think this is a good opportunity to talk a little bit about Orientalism, something that when you are looking at a brand that has had a long history like Guerlain is inevitable, because Guerlain as a brand was created at a time that was completely different from the times we were living in today, at a time when various other things were considered acceptable, and today those things would be considered completely unacceptable. We view Orientalism as problematic today because it's linked to Western colonialism and imperialism, and it served as a means to establish Western superiority by creating a distorted, essentialized, and often racist other perception of the East. We see Orientalist tropes in fragrances like Samsara and fragrances like Shalimar, and we see Guerlain as a brand in the 21st century doing their very best to move forward in a way that is inclusive for their customer base and in a way that is acceptable in the 21st century. Because if there's one big difference from when Guerlain started and where Guerlain is today, is that as a brand, Guerlain recognizes the need to appeal to a global audience, and that means shedding the kind of Orientalism, the imperialism tropes that they might have been leaning towards when they first started, might I add, in the 1800s, but now can no longer adopt for fear of essentially becoming irrelevant as a brand, among other things, of course. But I think it's interesting, and I think it's important to talk about this and how brands develop and move forward and change throughout their history, because we can't ignore history, but we can use history as an important tool set to learn from and develop so we don't make these same mistakes again. In 2005, Guerlain decided to launch their two premium collections, which are L'Art and La Matière. These collections are some of the highest priced Guerlain fragrances you can get, and essentially these perfumes deviated from previous Guerlain collections by really choosing to focus on one or two notes per fragrance. Now, they decided to really spotlight these notes to showcase Guerlain's ability to have these high quality, beautiful raw materials in their fragrances. So that's why each perfume within the range, like Rose Barbare, Tonka Imperial, and Neroli Outre Noir, are inspired by those one or two note fragrances. And that is a collection that has been added to since 2005. Let's talk about one of the most well-known contemporary fragrances by Guerlain, which is of course Mon Guerlain, a beautiful aromatic lavender scent. At least that's how I describe it in many of my videos. I absolutely love this perfume for its versatility and the history of this fragrance, even though it has only been around for comparatively less time than some of the other Guerlain perfumes, is quite fascinating. This fragrance was originally released in 2017 and was heavily inspired by its face, actress Angelina Jolie, and it was created in collaboration between two Guerlain perfumers, Thierry Wasser and Delphine Jelk, and this scent is supposed to be a tribute to the feminine ideal. Angelina Jolie was inspired to inject a bit of personal history into the production of this fragrance, and she was particularly touched by this story that she had about her mother using Guerlain powder when she was a child. So this all culminated into the fragrance we now know as Mon Guerlain. And another thing that is very interesting about this fragrance is that it uses the Guerlain Quadrilobe bottle, which is a bottle that has been in rotation for Guerlain for almost 100 years. And it was actually launched in 1908. So it's been around for more than 100 years, and it resembles an alchemist's bottle. So this perfume, even though it's known as one of those like contemporary designer fragrances that a lot of people are familiar with, actually does have a long-standing heritage with the brand. There are these little caveats, there are these little idiosyncrasies within the fragrance that very much represent who Guerlain is as a brand historically. Alright, so that's it for this episode of the Fragrance Report, focusing on the history of the House of Guerlain. Definitely let me know, have you learned anything new today? What I do love about this house is the fact that they very effectively market towards that contemporary audience with a nod to their past legacy. We see that with their L'Art and La Matière collection, which really focuses on being inspired by their fragrances back in the 1800s, but relaunching them with a modern twist. And they've also very effectively essentially monopolize the bee aesthetic in that iconic caged bottle. And I feel like in my collection, I actually have one of the Allegoria fragrances. And to me, whenever I smell that perfume, I'm instantly kind of like brought into this like feeling of feeling comforted and at peace and a little bit nostalgic, because you have like that juxtaposition of kind of like aromatic notes and citrusy notes. And what I find really interesting about Guerlain, to wrap it all up, is the fact that they so very effectively cater towards a variety of different customers. So you have their affordable fragrances like Mon Guerlain, you have their Allegoria line, which is a step up, and then you have their luxury ultra exclusive lines as well. So I think that they very interestingly and effectively cater towards all different markets in a way that, yes, other designer brands do attempt, but I would say few are as effective and as notorious at doing so than Guerlain. So let me know, what did you think of this Fragrance Report podcast? Are you excited about season 2? Let me know what you want to see me talk about in the comments below. As always, thank you for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye. This episode's music was brought to you by Kevin McLeod over at Incompetech. This is Beauty Flow by Kevin McLeod at Incompetech.com and is licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license.